belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I bear witness to His oneness, and that He is the first before every number, and the last after every unit. He is omnipresent, and He has chosen by preference Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to deliver His message to the entire mankind. It's indeed an uncommon privilege to have been requested to have this session with our dear fathers and my fellow youth in the mosque. It's a request that I have taken with every sense of humility. I think I've dodged this enough. I ran out of excuse, and Brother Lutfi was like, you just have to get this done. It's always a pleasure to listen to our various erudite scholars in the Surau. Our father is here Prof. Martin, and we feel like we've not exhausted the depth of knowledge that they have. We'd rather be on the other side of the divide, listening to them rather than taking out of the precious time to also talk in their presence. However, if we don't start doing it in their presence also, where do we get corrected? So on that premise that this responsibility had been taken. A few topics were proposed, and we had a few back and forth with Brother Lutfi. We couldn't agree on one, but eventually we came to the conclusion that Brother Yusuf Sultan, and I think at some point Adewale, before he left PV8, had discussed extensively on issues related to Islamic finance, especially from the Sharia point of view. I'm not a Sharia scholar, but nonetheless, the kind of thing that I do also require that I interact less with individuals, because it's more related to organizations. So eventually we came to this conclusion that we'll have a series whereby we look at behavioral biases among Muslim investors. After all, whether or not we like it, either as individuals or perhaps in our various corporate relationships that we have outside, we do some form of investment. And as Muslim investors, it means there are other types of investors. What therefore makes a Muslim investor distinct is the fact that his investment will have to be based on the guidance as provided by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I've been told it's about 25 minutes or so talk, and I'll try to keep within that time limit so that we'll have time to get to listen to your parents. Perhaps we want to share more experiences that would make it more beneficial for all of us. So there are a few stuff that I'd like to talk about here. First is to start on financial security. That is carefully selected because at the end of the day, what we also want is some form of taking care of the fact that the most salient thing about the future is that the future itself is uncertain. So within the realm of our own human understanding, we want to put in place measures that we think perhaps will guarantee or perhaps provide some form of security from financial stress, if and when they may arise. Because Allah also has promised that from time He will test us, not only with our wealth, but with other things He has bestowed us with. Then why is this needed in the first instance? Then how can this be achieved? Of course, what are the investment opportunities there are? The main focus of discussion should have been on investor biases, but like I mentioned, the intent is to make it a series. We don't start talking of behavioral biases if the fundamentals of investment itself is not well laid out. Then eventually, I always like to end my talk by saying, nothing is compulsory, it's all in our hands. It depends on how we all look at it at the end of the day. Now, there are quotes from the Quran, just a few of them. And why I want to start with this is the fact that there is a tendency of we having a very common bias, which is referred to as overconfidence. We have so many years of experience, we have done the same thing over and over. We know people who have lost money, we know people who have made money, we read news, we hear what is in vogue, technology is making things happen, and so on and so forth. The tendency, therefore, is for us to aggregate so much knowledge to ourselves, to think that things can happen the way we expect them to happen. But no, Allah is in charge, He will always be in charge. He has, some verses of the Quran advertise the fact that we are absolutely dependent on Him, to say that did He not find you as an orphan and then sheltered you? Did He not find you unguided and then guided you? And did He not find you needy and then satisfy your needs? These are from Surau to Duha. We recite this oftentimes even in our Surah. The point here is that the basic fundamentals that humans will want to look for, wealth, shelter, guidance, and so on and so forth. The tendency is for us to think our qualifications, our educations, our possessions, and so on and so forth will be so enormous to the extent that we don't need any further guidance. But Allah here is calling us to attention that even against all those that He has provided for us, He still has that right, that sole and absolute right to claim that He is the one that is guiding us and providing for us in all that we do. But then you have wealth, you have children, and Allah also says in Quran 64 verse 15 that they are only but a test. So these possessions, this wealth, these acquisitions, when we so have them, the fundamental at the back of our mind should be that we are only a trustee, that we will be asked as to how we have deployed them. But Allah therefore promises a great reward for those who have done it properly. Another analogy I like to draw is from Surah to Yusuf, verse 47 to 49. Of course, the very famous story in the Quran where the brother of Yusuf visited him in Egypt, and he had requested them that he had seen a dream that there would be some famine after some period of time, and make provisions so that when this eventually happens, whatever you have put forth will be used to meet that particular situation. The analogy is to say that investments are like that. They are usually what you have set aside in a time of plenty, because a time would come where there will also be scarcity, and as a result you'll be able to fall back on those. So this again is another analogy that I'd like to draw. And of course a few ideas here and there. There is a ton of them, just to scoop a few here and there. It's to say that truly for every nation there is a trial, and the trial for my nation is wealth. This is in Jamia al-Tirmidhi, hadith number 2336. And the Prophet ﷺ is, of that particular concern, that he has left with us the Quran as the guidance, the hadith, as his way of life, But then he has also sounded the fact that one of the issues that his nation will be faced with is that of wealth. And this again is alluded to in another hadith where he had mentioned that the insatiable thirst for wealth is exemplified in the hadith, where it says, if the son of Adam had a valley full of gold, he would like to have two valleys. That is, we are very, very insatiable when it comes to wealth acquisition, because it will just not be enough. The more of it we have, the more of it we crave for. This in itself is not an issue, but again, the fact that the tendency is there for it to be very distracting is what the Prophet is calling our attention to. And the last hadith, which I'd like to share quickly, is that the Prophet further cautioned about the potential dangers of obsessively pursuing wealth, saying, by Allah, it is not the poverty I fear for you. Rather, I fear you will be given the wealth of the world, just as it was given to those before you. You will compete for it just as they competed for it, and it will ruin you just as it ruined them. The various hadiths here would appear as though shouldn't Muslims pursue wealth. That is not the bottom line. We also need wealth. And the analogy again is that it's on the wealth that will pay zakat, the wealth that will ensure distributive justice. We take care of things that are very fundamental to the day. But it's to say that the craving for wealth itself would, if not properly done, may yield some unintended consequences. So therefore, against this background, when we crave for wealth, what we want is financial security. And I put Islamic in quote here because there could also be various forms of financial security. And because Islam, takes a comprehensive view of things. Now we have a flow here. There is wealth and there is investment. Of course, when you have excess of income and assets over expenses and liabilities, you have some form of wealth because you have met your threshold in terms of expenditures, in terms of need that you have. So let's say that excess you want to put into something, and that is investment. So what is that investment itself? It is the process of committing money and other resources now. And that is very fundamental because there is a concept of present value, there is a concept of future value. You commit it now. The moment you do it now, you are already depriving yourself of certain things. Because you could spend the money, you could also use the money for charity, you could use the money for so many other things, and it will give you some form of utility. But you have held back, so you are committing the money or other resources that you have into buying assets. Why are we saying assets? Because assets are things of value that in themselves would grow. And as they grow, they give you compensation for the deprivation you have imposed on yourself by not committing or by not spending the money that you have. So, for everything you do, therefore, there is an aim. So why are you doing it? Nobody is forcing you to do it. Why are you committing some funds into some buying assets? The aim is that you want to increase the value over time to serve as a compensation for delayed consumption and time value of money. This is the concept of inflation, because ringgit, of course, alhamdulillah, it's appreciating now. But over the past few months, it has taken a deep hit. You know how well that the same ringgit you have, you bring to the market, you buy less and less and less. So if you don't spend now, the more you hold on to the money, the more you will be losing value. So time value of money. Or perhaps to meet some future needs. Kids wants to go to school, kids will be getting married. There are certain things I want to put some sinking fund because I want to plan to put some things in the future. For all these, you put some funds now. Or perhaps for precautionary purposes. The point remains that in terms of time preference, the commitment of the funds will have to be now, and the benefit will have to be in future. You are now having some probability that that money that I've committed now, if Allah so wills, would yield enough returns to serve as compensation for delayed consumption, or perhaps as the benefit for putting the money into business. But it's not compulsory, isn't it? Muslims always have to be very mindful of that fact, that that does not concern Allah. We should not take for granted that the moment we commit the funds, it must always yield something. No, it doesn't appear that way. So, what makes it sustainable, therefore, is that we also have to bear in mind that we meet such personal, social, and environmental needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own. So, the funds that is so committed and the purpose for which it is committed is such that we also bear in mind that there are 5 essentials of the makasib. The first is the protection of wealth, protection of faith, Adeen. It must be in compliance with what Allah has permitted. If not, then it's not an investment. In fact, it's not going to yield return, it's going to yield punishment, it's going to yield calamity, as the case may be. So we say we don't want it to be something that involves riba, that involves bara, maisir, aram, and so on and so forth. But it must also be related to the protection of life. We will not be investing, no matter how lucrative the returns may seem. If it's something that will have implications for the life of people, we don't want to invest in, for instance, alcohol, or we want to invest in things that will bring, harm to the society. And of course, protection of intellect. The investment should be not only in terms of its substance, but propagation of the idea itself. That the generations to come will also be able to develop on those, and the cause of humanity will be strengthened. And of course, protection of lineage, so that at the end of the day, we are not depriving the future generations of what belongs to them. Very fundamental to the whole concept is that of wealth at the end of the day. So, financial security, therefore, is a process, because these components must be seen together, from wealth to investment to making such investment transform into sustainable wealth, but within the context or within the framework of Maqasid al-Sharia, so that it has the barakah that it so deserves. Now, why is it that we need this financial security? I've mentioned earlier that Allah, has mentioned in the Quran that definitely is going to test us with something of fear, hunger, and loss of wealth, and lives and fruits, but give good tidings to the patient. So this means, therefore, that no matter how well we put all these things into perspective, a time would come where we would be tested. And once this test comes, one of the things that we have, even within our very limited powers that Allah has, given us as humans, is our financial resources. It's our wealth. For instance, in order to meet this, child becomes sick, we want to pay for the insurance, we want to pay for the health care. Child needs to go to school, we want to do that. Or perhaps some other things that will come, maybe famine or some other situations as the case may be. Then, we currently live in a world of temptation, and this is very, very true. Credit is very excessive. People use future income for present expenditure. We see this a lot, and it's very disheartening that even in Muslim societies, people are very much indebted. There is this concept of compound interest, where you not only pay interest on the principal, but you also pay on the interest itself that is charged. So you have seen instances where people's cravings for consumption, people's cravings for acquisition, have made them to live beyond their means. They don't buy things because they need them. They buy things because it's very, very accessible. There is this framing effect. At times I do see, they would say 99.9% discount. Who does that? So is it that they are getting just 1% of the sales or whatever? But, even when we have that particular thing, the question is, do we really check? Do we really ask if what we're acquiring are things we actually need, or things that we just on the basis of the fact that they are available and we keep piling and piling and piling? And there's a lot of changes in policy also. There is a lot of subsidy rationalization going on. And it's not only Malaysia, it's across the world. As we are reeling out from the effect of COVID-19, the world also has had to grapple with some form of financial tightening. Interest rates, policy rates keeps increasing because the government has to do that as part of monetary policy intervention and so on and so forth. So policies are changing, subsidies, rationalization and so on and so forth. And of course there is the absence of the middle class. Maybe to some extent Malaysia is still very, very here and there, but in most of the Muslim countries what you see is either you have or you don't have at all. So this particular situation makes it very expedient that we have that. But again, there is the principles of Sharia which underlies Islamic finance, which means that either for precautionary purposes, again, we don't know, so we have to take precaution. So there is a need to have some things set aside. Most of the things we see today is that we see people saying that their income minus expenditure is equal to savings. It should be income minus savings equals to expenditure, because you don't get to save at all. And for that particular reason, there are always no precautionary, safety nets. Then there is the concept of hedging. Either you want your investment to appreciate, or you want to, mitigate against some form of depreciation, or you want to have some form of capital conservation. I think there's a L missing in the spelling there. Then the last one is that social justice, to ensure that even when you have and you're sufficient, the concept of Islam is that it is theologically communitarian. The very essence of Islam is about the society. And for that particular reason, it adapts, without compromising its very essence. Therefore, there could be people who have some skills, but do not have the financial wherewithal. I think we have discussed about Musharaka, Mudaraba, Qard, and all these forms of financing there in the past, where there could be some form of beneficial partnership, where those who are the surplus spending unit, who have some form of excess, we look at those who are deficit spending unit but have got some skills but lack the financial wherewithal, to put resources together to ensure that there's some form of beneficial partnership, removal of hardship, protection of public interest, because when people have things to do, then there will be less crisis in the society. And of course, distributive justice makes it very easy for everybody to be just fine. And that's the essence of zakat, as the case may be, because it's also linked to our wealth. At the end of the day, there's this concept we say in Africa that, to the extent that the poor people are weak, the rich people also cannot sleep. So that is the concept, to say that the more things are redistributed, then there will be some form of financial security. So this is not very friendly to the eye, but I'll just run through it quickly. Some form of investment mistakes that could ruin financial well-being. You could have taken all precautionary measures. You could have at least elicited the opinion of experts. You could have also had access to some form of information that gives you an edge that ordinarily should make your business very successful. But then, people often invest without any financial goals. At times they just do it. When you ask, what is the mission? Why are you doing it? Well, I just have some few coins here and there, and I thought somebody told me that this is very good business, and that's what I'm doing. It's not well thought out, and as a result, usually such will result in unintended consequences. So to attain financial secure future, the goal should be smart, it should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable, it should be realistic, it should be timely. It shouldn't be something that is past oriented. You you want to invest in a particular agricultural activity, but it's already time of harvest. They're already harvested, so they're only going to start again and things like that. So the timing, therefore, is past oriented. Then people take more risk than they can afford. Is that okay? What's your risk tolerance? And mine will be different from yours. Because I may be very risk averse, you may be very risk loving. The concept is that the higher the risk, the higher the return. So if I'm very much inclined to getting a very high return, then I should know that I'll be investing in a very high risk. But if my risk aversion is such that I do not want to do that, I should not say on the basis of the fact that my friend is doing it, then I want to do it. It's always going to be counterproductive. And there is this concept of emotional stability that comes with it. People, at times, we see that then, in addition to their having issues with their business, they also develop health issues because hypertension or some form of scare that they have self-imposed on themselves are correcting. Because one, there is no financial goal that they have set for themselves, and they also don't know what is their risk tolerance or risk appetite, as the case may be. Investing in financial products you don't understand. That's another one. People at times want to invest in certain things because of the framing effect. If they tell you this business is going to yield 40% return, what they also tell you in the other way is that it has 60% risk of not getting that return. So the way it's framed is the way you look at it. So you should have a very comprehensive view of what you are looking at so that you ask questions. In Islam, one of the things we are encouraged to do is to always ask. There is no basis for assumption that I have been told this and that is it. If you don't ask, then how do you cope? So there is something we also say in Africa that you just don't tell me this is the answer. I'm going to ask what is the question. So, but at times I understand there is this concept of social norms. People whom we hold in very high esteem, and we do ask them certain things, and they tell us certain things. But again, that does not preclude from further asking and asking and asking. We don't even read documents at times. And of course, deliberately it's done that way because the fonts are very small, the huge document, and we just sign and move on and things like that. And at the end of the day, only for us to realize that things are not going on as planned. There is lack of diversification. You don't put all your eggs in a basket. You have all your units are in PV8, block C only, and things like that. Get some in PV2, get some other form of investment. Maybe you want to invest in gold, maybe some other investment in some other businesses and things like that. Because it's always like that. Diversification would entail that as one is going down, most likely the other one will go up. And you'll be able to find yourself somewhere in a very stable position. But when you put all your eggs in a basket, of course, if they all yield, so fine. But what of in the event that they all, do suffer some form of issue? I know of someone who has a series of businesses. Unfortunately, the boycott caught up with him. Of course, it's not his fault, but most of the things he sells are things that we're about to boycott. And it's unfortunate that he has had to bear the incidents, but that was a huge concentration, because he was focusing more on the products of a particular product because they move very fast. And it turns out that just when he had stocked up, then the awareness became stronger and things like that, and he has had to bear the incidents. Investing in what is hot, there is this concept of hot money, and there is this concept of patient capital. What this means is that you have to make a distinction between the two. There are certain investments that they just don't yield quickly enough. So your patience has to be very, very, very strong, because what they require is over time for them to turn things around. But if you are interested in what we call, hot kind of business, touch and go kind of stuff, then you also have to understand very well the risk that comes with them. I'm going to talk on the decision behavioral biases later on, and the last one is lack of financial literacy. For Allah's sake, financial knowledge is very, very important. How much you are aware about financing would also help you to make sure your investment is done properly. Don't forget, there are three key decisions. There is the investment decision that comes first, and there is the financing decision that comes next, and there is the day-to-day management, which is the working capital decision. The investment decision would be like, what do I want to invest in? How much do I need? and where do I want to invest. It's when this is clear that you now start thinking of how much do I need. But at times you see people look for money first, only then they start thinking of what they want to do with it. When money has a cost, and at times the tendency is that you now want to tie the money to what you want to do, rather than it should be what you want to do that determines how much you need. Then you know from where to raise the money. If it's sufficient, you know. If it's in excess, you know. So the point is not to flip the sequence. Investment decisions must always come first before financing decision. Is that okay? Then the day-to-day running will come. Okay, so how can this be achieved quickly? There's this concept of 7 P's. Proper planning plus prayer prevent poor performance. What we always teach students in the MBA school is the concept of these 5 P's. We say proper planning prevents poor performance. You have done your cash flow analysis, you have done your investment technique analysis, either net present value or your IRR, profitability index and things like that. The NPV is positive, everything is looking cool and things like that. They say, okay, you are good to go. No, what Muslims have to understand, proper planning plus prayer, because the concept of Allah cannot be taken away from the whole thing. The hidayah itself, the barakah that comes with it. So we say it should be 7 P's, proper planning, get all the details right, in terms of the political consideration, economic consideration, environmental consideration is also very important these days. Social consideration is very important, technological consideration, legal consideration. There's so many things. The feasibility has to be top-notch. And once you do this, of course, plus prayer, you'll be able to prevent poor performance. There's a concept of 5 Ds also. Just don't rush into things. There has to be a desire first. If you don't desire doing something, some people even say 60. You have to dream about it first. Because the idea must first of all come to you. It starts with what we call ID. It keeps going on in your head. It's an ID. Because it keeps coming. You look here, you see it. You look there, you see it. It becomes an idea. The moment it becomes an idea, then you start curating it. Then you mention it to A, mention it to B, to C. It sounds good. Maybe it's ideal. Is that okay? Then it graduates to your ideology. Because it must be something ingrained in you first, before you can therefore move. So that desire must be very, very strong. But of course, people have desire, but they don't decide. At times they think they have taken a decision, but no, that is not a decision. Decision has to be effective. It's not that, I've decided to become a practicing Muslim. No, you also have to start praying. You also have to start doing, the ibadat and things like that. So it's not just a desire or a decision. It comes with discipline also, because oftentimes things will not go as planned. It's not always that linear. There will be unintended consequences. There are things you have not planned that you have to see, but you have to be very, very disciplined. Determination and dedication will also be very important. Recognizing your responsibility. You either want to look into the mirror or you look outside of the window. Because if you keep looking into the mirror, who do you see? You see yourself. And you may be very contented at times. But at times you should also look outside of the window to see that there are people who are either doing better than you are doing, or they are not doing as much as you are doing. So that you can put yourself in context. And it helps you to learn, so that you can, put your situation in a kind of localized situation. Let me just give this example. There was a company that was into detergents. They sell detergents that we used to wash our white shirts and things like that. And they were not making enough sales. What did they do? They decided to advertise. They had this billboard divided into 3. First part, second part, third part. The first part had dirty clothes. The second part had the detergent. The third part had very clean, folded clothes. The moment they mounted the billboard, you know what happened? Sales went up. You could link the advertisement to the increase in sales. They thought of expanding. Any business would think about that. Let's move to Arabia. They put on a lot of white. There could be a lot of markets. When they got there, sales went down. They said, why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Last time we had this problem in Malaysia, what did we do? We erected the billboard. They brought the same billboard, divided it into 3. You know what happened? Sales went down the more. What happened? Can anyone tell me what happened? Because they read from the right. Thanks so much, sir. So the first thing they saw was well-ironed clothes. If you use this to wash, it's the same strategy but will not work in different contexts. So the point here is, look into the mirror, look outside of the window, as the case may be, but glocalize to fit your own situation. Use an advisor. Please, people don't always want to pay for, can imagine I want to paint my house, I want to fix the electricity, I want to fix. At some point, I'm just going to mess things up. At some point, use some experts. They are very cheap at times, but they give you very quality information that helps you to prevent yourself from either running foul of technical issues, or perhaps Sharia issues, or perhaps even falling for Ponzi schemes. Then, before thinking and innovative, and of course adapt a layered approach. I think time is also the essence. So, take note of low probability. There may be some high-risk events. They don't happen often, but once they happen, they can be very severe. I've mentioned the issue of boycott. Fire accidents is another, what we have. People at times don't take insurance even for their businesses. Do not invest in more than you can afford to lose. This is also very important, especially family and friends businesses. As somebody in the diaspora, I will get to experience this a lot. You feel like instead of sending money back all the time, how about to empower somebody? But you realize that you're in a perpetual state of empowerment, because people think it's your money, people think, it's my uncle's money, it's my brother's money. So if, for instance, it's not something you can afford to lose, please don't put it there. But if something you think, if eventually it goes south, you can cope with, why not? Be adaptive rather than staying the course too. Try to move with the situation. You cannot just be static. Is that okay? But don't forget the objective for which you have started the business in the first instance. Just don't stay the course. I must remain in it because I'm in it already. No. Just try to move with the situation. Understand your sustainable wealth need. Income and assets values will fluctuate beyond your control. What cannot go beyond your control is your expenses and liabilities. And of course, look at worst case versus normal case versus best case scenario, regular versus irregular. And understand your wealth cycle to identify where is your break-even point. Break-even point is that point where you can at least cover your fixed costs, as the case may be. There are a number of things here I'll just run through. You have to focus on the future, reduce your exposure, prepare for extremes, and act as necessary. In other words, you cannot just be held in the past. We have to be forward-looking. Of course, reward yourself also. When people have investments, the tendency is that they don't even pay themselves salaries. I've seen this a lot because I'm also susceptible to that. You just get some returns, then use the return for some other thing. Pay yourself also. Hope is good, but it's not a strategy. Don't always say that we have hope, we have hope. It's not to be hopeless, but of course you have to be strategic. Get insurance, takaful is needed, you can fall sick, illness can come, theft, and so on and so forth. There is a diversification of assets I've mentioned, not only in terms of location, business, currency, asset, but most importantly, just give charity also. We cannot exhaust the benefits of Sadaqah as indicated. I think this slide should be shared. The brother wants to call the other. Our time moves very fast. So there are investment opportunities in unit trust, in stocks, in fixed income securities, Sukuk, investment account platform in Malaysia, you have restricted and unrestricted, gold and property, digital tokens, crowdfunding, P2P are all things that we have to do. Okay, just when we get to that, I think it's the next 1 minute or so, I would round off. This is supposed to be the crux of the discussion, but like I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's going to be a series. I've also come to that conclusion that it's something that we have to take maybe one after the other. I would arrange with my brothers to have a session on that. But these are some of examples that we can have as some of the biases that affect Muslims. Of course, not only Muslims, but the way it affects us more than the other religion. Given the fact that we have two filters, we not only look at the mechanics, we also look at the spirit. We not only look at the fact that it is something that we want to use to enhance our own well-offness, but it's also an act of worship. And we say indeed, our life, our death, our sacrifices, our wealth, everything belongs to Allah. So there is this confirmation bias that we always want to confirm what we believe and things like that. So if for instance, brother Lutfi is going to tell me that it's not good to invest in the production of mineral water, I would rather not want to talk to him. I want to talk to another person because I think he's going to tell me what I like. There is the experiential, bias that comes with our previous experiences. But again, things don't always happen the same way. Things that it happened previously does not mean it will happen exactly the same way. Loss aversion, always wanting to keep something because we don't want to lose the money we have invested. When you should sell it, just sell it because it's going to keep making losses anyway, but you just don't want to come to that realization. I've spent so much on this car, I'd rather keep bringing it to the shop and things like to fix it. But again, it's not adding to the business, it's not doing what it is. Of course, the case of overconfidence is always there, especially when things in the initial stage moves in the direction that we have expected. Then we tend to arrogate so much power to ourselves. I mean, the analogy is sort of the calf, the two farmers, when the other one is having some beneficial stuff. Disposition bias, when you sell too early, you're still within your risk tolerance. Just hold on to the investment, don't sell it. But at times, you also want to quickly dispose of it and things like that. And at times, you hold more than longer the case may require. Familiarity bias, because I'm very familiar. When it comes to this is my area, But again, it also has some implication. There is a mental accounting where we compartmentalize our brains into certain things. The same person would invest in mortgage, but the same person would also invest in some sukuk, as the case may be. Not looking at them that you should look at them as a collective, but start compartmentalizing and things like that. So we'll go deep into all this. There's the heading mentality. There is so many other heuristics that we'll talk about. But most importantly is that can we achieve financial security? I would say it's in your hands. Just like that bird you see there. That bird is alive. If you ask whether it's, and that is my hand. If you ask whether this bird is alive, and I say yes, you may decide to squeeze it, and you will kill it, then I'll become a liar. And if I say no, the bird is dead, you may decide to open your hand, and it will fly away. So the point is, would you achieve financial security? Would you do otherwise? I think it's in your hands. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is an ancient prayer. I've just spoke somewhere that I think should be Allah, rather than grant me the strength to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the wisdom to do the difference. Thanks so much, sir.
If there's any question, maybe one question we can take. We have one question. Is there?
Well, one question.
Okay.
You mentioned about wealth. The definition of wealth is the excess of income.
Right.
So where do you put the sadaqah, the charity? In the expenses or in investment?
No, I think that's a very clear concept. There is a nisab upon which you calculate the zakat and things like that. And of course, it's in excess of whatever it is that you would have after you have taken care of all the needs that you would have to do. So, if for instance your expenses is huge, or you have some liabilities to the extent that the source of wealth itself that you have is not sufficient to take care of those, of course scholars would advise accordingly on what you have to do. But my understanding of your question is to say that
the payment of zakat, should you classify it as an expense, or should you classify it as a
expenditure or investment?
No, zakat is not an investment in that concept, because what you are expecting in return for zakat is the reward from Allah, because an obligation that you have to do once you meet the threshold for doing that. So I don't say that I'm investing in zakat. You pay zakat because you have an obligation to do so. But when you invest, it's your own volition that you have looked at the nature of the asset, you have looked at the nature of the business, you think it could yield some returns on you. That particular item itself can also become zakatable later on if you earn some things. But zakat itself, in my understanding, I think the shuyukh here would be a different asset class. Not to say asset class, it would be a different category by itself.
Do you have any more questions?
But of course, if you pay zakat, I do know that at least in the Malaysian context here, when you do your tax filings and things like that, some considerations are given for how that is computed and so on, which in itself is very encouraging. Because at the end of the day, one of the things zakat is a social finance platform among the so many waqf, sadaqah, and so on and so forth, that will help to achieve what we mentioned earlier in terms of redistributive wealth. But again, maybe as a form of conclusion, I've also mentioned here that giving charity, not only in terms of sadaqah, even when you pay zakat, is also a way of ensuring that you have some financial security. And then, because the barakah will come into whatever it is you are trying.
So, Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah